I'm Espo in the Four Peaks minibar, and this is a PHNX special retort. Last week, when Matt Ishbia sat in front of Phoenix media and said when it came to the Phoenix Suns, the house wasn't on fire, he was surprisingly right. But that doesn't mean there weren't a massive amount of smoke detectors going off, setting alarms sounding throughout the entire season. The Phoenix Suns were a problem. And that's because James Jones and Matt Ishbia set the bar high, saying that this was a championship team and that they wanted to be a championship organization in the NBA. Well, there's nothing wrong with saying that. It made it very clear that it was that or it was failure this year with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. And guess what? It was failure. I don't care if you won 49 games, and that was the third most wins you've had in the last 18 years or whatever it is. That does not make it okay to have 49 wins in a season where the expectation was to win a title. Now, they took the first step to rectifying that on Thursday by letting head coach Frank Vogel go. But don't kid yourself. That's not the thing that's going to solve everything and all the problems for the Phoenix Suns. Sure, did Frank lose the locker room? It appeared so based on that Athletic article and some of the things that have come out since the season ended. And even the eye test told you that as far back as Christmas. But changing the head coach does not change the fundamental issues that led to this team playing so poorly. They did not seem like a connected team. They did not seem like a team that was having fun. And they certainly did not seem like a team that understood the assignment in terms of trying to win it all. They seemed like a team that thought they could flip a switch, that their offense would automatically show up when they needed it to, but they were unwilling to run whatever system was in place in favor of iso ball. Now, a new head coach puts you in a better position to potentially have a new system and get different buy-in, but I don't think they still have the right pieces, and that's where things are to come in the offseason. But before you can even look at the roster, I think you have to look at the entire level from general manager on down in terms of the front office. Now, I think James Jones will remain, but I don't know that he'll actually be the general manager of this team. I imagine that he may move into a role or stay in the president of basketball operations role, and you get somebody in turn who can be the general manager. James has said as much in the past that he'd be interested in looking at it that way, as he doesn't like the day-to-day in particular. So there is where you've got to start. Who are your decision makers in terms of when the roster is, right? After that, you've got to consider what roster moves you make. And before that, you got to figure out who your head coach is going to be. And sure, is it a little ass backwards to fire a coach, pick a new one before you determine if you're going to have somebody else in the front office making the bigger roster decisions? Probably, but when you look at Josh Bartelstein and James Jones, who are likely going nowhere, as well as Matt Ishbia, those are likely the guys that are going to make the coaching decision. And for me, you can fix the Suns in 3 easy steps. 1, hire an offensive coach that can actually make things happen on the floor. Mike Budenholzer's 5-out offense will certainly create a dynamic that you didn't see this year. A lot of movement on offense and generating a lot of looks at threes. The problem is Mike Budenholzer's offense isn't one predicated on stars, but rather sharing the ball and letting anybody that has the open shot make it. How will that resonate with a Kevin Durant, a Devin Booker, a Bradley Beal? Will they be willing to sacrifice for the greater good of the team if Mike Budenholzer is the hire? That is a giant question if you go that route. Could there be a dark horse candidate? Maybe a David Fizdale, who seemed to be the guy on Frank Vogel's staff that was willing to hold these players accountable? Maybe. And maybe there's another name outside of Mike Budenholzer, who Adrian Wojnarowski says is the leader in the clubhouse for the job, that may emerge as a potential candidate. Say a Chauncey Billups up in Portland, who may wind up being available due to how unsuccessful Portland was. I don't think Chauncey's the answer, but my guess is somebody inside the Suns thinks that he's at least worth a look. That's step 1. Find your offensive coach that can build a system, and don't have a defensive-minded guy in the main seat when you have a roster predicated on offense and high scoring. Second, I'm looking for a rim-rolling big that can come in and actually play in the pick and roll with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. Now, they thought maybe Drew Eubanks could be that guy in the second unit. He proved not to be this year. And it's really not what Yusuf Nurkic is either. I'm exploring all my options when it comes to a big man that can be part of a two-man game with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal to maximize their efforts as well when a Kevin Durant is on the bench. But I don't know that that's going to be far enough. I think you're going to have to explore every option that comes available to you, including looking at breaking up the big three. And you're not trading Bradley Beal because he's got a no-trade clause. Devin Booker is basically the king of Phoenix. Phoenix is his city as long as he wants it to be. Which makes me wonder, are you going to have conversations about moving on from Kevin Durant if the right deal becomes available? Sure, Chad Ochocinco said that Kevin Durant mentioned something about Miami and possibly being interested if the pieces are right. I don't know that it's true. People from Kevin Durant's camp turned a blind eye to those comments, basically saying they weren't. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And you got to wonder, would he even be interested in moving on? And there's a lot of options that you could look at. And I think you could get an athletic wing with a defensive prowess and some offensive ability that maybe fits the roster better so you can make more sense of your stars while adding a rim rolling big and make this roster a little deeper and fit together a little better. Now, that might not be popular because people will say, well, what about continuity? Well, guess what? Continuity doesn't matter if where you started wasn't good in the first place. Just because you stay together longer doesn't mean anything gets better. We've all experienced relationships like that. You don't stay just out of the hopes that it gets better if it's bad. And if that's where we're at, continuity doesn't mean anything in Phoenix. Winning does. And if the Phoenix Suns, James Jones, Matt Ishbia, Josh Bartelstein don't take a long, hard look at how you can make changes, the Phoenix Suns are headed for basketball purgatory. Not good. Not good enough to win a championship. And not bad enough to get a draft pick that can change your future, especially since you've already mortgaged all your draft capital either in pick swaps or trades where tanking isn't going to make a difference. Sure, the house might not be on fire, but if you're not willing to make changes, you're committing basketball arson, and it might be on fire soon enough.